Thanks for tuning in to another crochet knitting video tutorial. This is Wendy Ann, and today I'd like to show you how to attach applique to a knitted piece. This particular project is a baby blanket, so there's some special concerns for the end use of this particular item. I'll give you an overview of the materials. First off, the blanket was crocheted in a very bulky knit called Bernat Baby, and it's wonderfully soft, it's machine washable, and those are 2 points that I love. I want this to be durable. The second item that I'm using to attach these freeform crocheted letters is a Bernat yarn as well called Cotton-ish, and I like this because it's not only cotton, it has a little bit of acrylic, and again, the machine washable and durability of an item for a baby, which I hope will take the recipient into her childhood, is important. Now, what I did was I crocheted a blanket. It's a very simple, straightforward pattern that came from a vintage American thread pamphlet. Next thing I did was make these individual crocheted letters. I'm going to take one of them off. Actually, no, I won't. I'll just explain the process. So, roughly to do the letters, they were 8 chains high, and this is something that I don't have a pattern for. I basically thought in my head, block letters. Hopefully we can use these to teach little baby Indy how to learn her letters, which is why I didn't do cursive. If you were doing a name with a crocheted chain and then single crochet to make it double, you could do one long chain thread and then place it on the item to be appliqued in cursive letters with everything connected, and it would be real simple. I opted to do the block letters just to be a teaching tool and something that the child will be able to later on read. So once I completed all of the letters, I placed them on the blanket with pins. You have to be real careful to make sure with a bulky yarn like this that you remove all of the pins once you start and finish attaching them securely. The second thing I did was to take a contrasting thread, again the same Bernat Cotton-ish in green, to just secure the letters down in case the pins came out, or even as I removed the pins during the adhering process to keep the letters on. You use a contrasting color different from both your attaching yarn and the background and the applique, and that's going to make it easier to remove this when you're done. Just big basting stitches were used to put these on. Some of the areas of concern for this were, number one, I do want this to last a really long time. So I've done a couple of things that you might not do with knitting or crochet finishing techniques, which is tie knots. I've definitely tied knots to secure my starting for securing it down. This is a buttonhole or blanket stitch. And also I'm trying not to have the colors show through. You could see the basting stitch, this green shows up on the other side, but I'm trying not to have that violet color show up. So what you'll need is a needle that has a blunt tip, thread a nice long length of your adhering fastening yarn, and you could see I tied a serious knot to keep where I left off with the last purple from coming undone. I just want this to be able to be pulled, stepped on, washed, dragged at the playground, and not have these letters come off. So that's the reason for the knots. They'll also be enclosed underneath the letter and above the blanket, so they shouldn't show even after years of use. How I'm going to tie my knot is take a piece of, make sure this focuses, take a piece of the letter, pull through my single strand. I'm going to tie what's called a square knot. And a square knot is just like before you tie your shoelaces, where you go, make sure you get this, around and pull it through. And then to come back, instead of taking it over, you just do the opposite. So now it's going to go behind, and you're going to go under instead of over. And that makes a nice secure knot. We'll trim the edge, the end rather. And the last thing I want to show you for this video is how to do that blanket stitch or buttonhole stitch. You will come up in the letter, grab some of the thread, the yarn beneath. You're not going down all the way through the huge amount of crochet like this. If you do it like this, it will definitely stay on, but then you'll see the purple on the other side. It'll be unsightly. So just take one strand of this jumbo yarn, pull it through, and you'll want to catch the loop as you come through. And what that will do is, instead of having the edge sort of disappear, the border that we're creating, it will show. And then we'll come around like this, take another bit of the yarn from the letter and a bit of the white blanket background. Again, one strand if at all possible. And we're going to put the needle over the previous strand, so that the previous stitch, so that it, again, instead of this coming directly up over the yarn, it's being caught by the needle that just came out, the thread that just came out, to keep it down. That's going to give a little border like this all the way around. When we come to just going to do another stitch here. You take a little bit of the letter, a little bit of the yarn from the blanket background, and you see here, you have to really watch if you're using kind of a chenille bulky like this, because this was what I originally had. That's 2 strands. You could feel it with the blunt edge that there's 2, so I just want to take the 1. The other thing, when you're making your freeform letters, you'll see that when you stitch it down, you have some leeway, so to speak. This letter, when I first created this letter I, this part dipped down a little bit from the crocheting I did, because I just freeformed. I chained down, then I turned and went out and came back and all the way over to this side and up, and it's 2 together here to come up for the eye. And it's basically, you're either adding or decreasing to make these rounded edges, and you just form the letters with a guide of, in my case, was about 8 chain high. At any rate, it was a little bit uneven, but when I'm attaching it to the blanket, I can use both the rows of the blanket to line it up as I pin and then baste. And then here I have a little extra. My stitching was tighter on this side, even before, obviously it is now, it's sewn down, but even before I sewed it down, and this was a little bit looser because this was the chain, and I came up around and then crocheted, single crochet down. So this is a little bit looser. I will be able to kind of bring that together and secure it down so that they're both the same height on either side with my stitching. So you can certainly create more uniform letters, or you can leave them a little bit off kilter depending on the design aesthetic that you're seeking to achieve. It is a handmade item, so sometimes the little quirkiness that you might find with an uneven stitching is something that you'd be looking for. But I'm going to ease this together a little bit when I fasten it down. So those are my tips for how to attach applique letters to a baby blanket using blanket stitch or buttonhole stitch. And please give a thumbs up if you found this video at all useful or informative. It certainly encourages me to keep making them. And I thank you to all my subscribers who have subscribed to my channel. I did some updating with my phone and video editing software, so you should see some more regular posts from me